students that came back from Orlando. Saw your posts. Heard you had a good time. You sang in the choir, represented Laurel University very well, I heard. I have spies in the camp, so I hear that you did a good job, and we're really proud of you. So today we have chapel with a special speaker. And before I tell you about her, I'd like to tell you that after chapel, we're going to be spending some time today videotaping in my office little blurbs about what you think about the school. And if you really want to be totally honest, yeah, you can say the truth. But we're hoping that you can share with us your experience, and we're really interested in our graduating seniors. We want to make sure to capture what you say about the school before you leave. But anybody's invited, so stop by, and we'll do our best to either do it at that moment or schedule some other time that works for everybody, okay? So, and I appreciate that. It's just, for me as a person who's trying to let other people know about Laurel University, your faces are the faces that I want people to see. You are our students. You are Laurel University. So that's important to us. Valda Boyd Ford. Let me say that again. Valda Boyd Ford is your speaker today. She comes originally from High Point. She has gone to other places, many other places all over the world. And her claim to fame is that she really knows how and loves and enjoys creating connection through communication between people who are very different for any kind of reason. So I would like you to welcome Valda Boyd Ford.
Good morning.
It's my pleasure to be here today. It is always good to be in a community of people who believe that giving is a good thing. Too many of us don't think that, or we have forgotten it. And I have some prepared words that I'll start with today, and then we'll move on from there. I am the granddaughter of a Baptist minister and the daughter of a Methodist minister. So as you might imagine, there were some interesting things going on at the dinner table on Sundays sometimes. A difference in philosophy and how we approach things. But ultimately, I learned that we should always love everyone. And from 1 Corinthians, I like this as much as anything. If I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have a faith that can move mountains, but have not love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and surrender my body to the flames, but have not love, I gain nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It is not rude. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no records of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. I grew up in less than ideal circumstances right here in High Point, North Carolina. As we talk about Black History Month, as we acknowledge the fact that America, the United States of America, is a place that is the land of liberty and justice for all, but it hasn't always been. I grew up in a time of segregation, and I love to tell that to people because so many people think that was such a very, very, very long time ago, but it was not. I was born in 1954, right here. I was born as a little colored girl, not as a black woman. That was something that evolved over time. I was colored or I was Negro. The term black would have been something that was bad. It was considered ugly to be black was to be something despised. My great-grandmother, if I would ask her for a cup of coffee, she'd always say, "No, girl, you can't have coffee." And I'd say, "Why not, Mother?" She says, "Because coffee will make you black." Well, I was thinking, she says, "No, because at that time, in a time of segregation, the thing that was most important was to be as close to white as possible. So, if the norm was white, anything far away from that was considered bad. Even as black people, we were taught that we were less than, that we were less than valuable. The simple act of asking for a drink of water at the wrong place could get me punished, could get me beat down, could get my mother punished for having a child who wasn't disciplined enough to understand that was not allowed. To go to a bathroom in a public place was not allowed. Even though we talked about being in the Bible Belt and about people being good Christians, the idea of being a Christian and still being biased against any group of people was allowed. It was accepted. We had an apartheid here. We don't like to call it that. We had internal terrorism here. There were people called the Klan that are still out and about, but they reared themselves right here on the streets of High Point, North Carolina, just 4 or 5 decades ago. Sometimes people would disappear. We wouldn't know what happened to them, but there would be whisperings. Perhaps they got out of line. Perhaps they crossed over some line that we were not supposed to cross. We didn't have a lot, but I didn't know it. I was very blessed that we had a lot of love in my household. We took the concept of love very, very much to heart. When I was growing up, I went to segregated schools. I went to an all-black elementary school, an all-black junior high school. That was before the days of the middle school. And then, when it was time for me to go to high school, when I was so excited about the fact of attending William Penn High School, oh yeah, when I had already picked up my teachers, decided which one I would just stare at and be hopeful the whole time while I was in the classroom, decided who was going to be my choir instructor and which boys in the band I was going to like. The whole dynamic was changed right here in High Point. It was determined that integration, which, if you know about Brown versus Board of Education in 1954 was passed, even though 1954 was the trial, it took many years and decades for the act of desegregation to actually take place. In High Point, North Carolina, that year was 1969. They determined that William Penn High School was no longer habitable, so they closed it. They built Andrews High School, and they split up the kids who would have gone to William Penn, half to Andrews, half to Central. It was a very interesting time. But for me, it was very confusing. And I bring this up because as we live today in these United States, in this city, in this town, I still hear people talking about who is not worthy, who is undeserving, those people. It doesn't matter what they look like. It doesn't matter where they came from. It doesn't matter what the difference is. How can we, as children of God, talk about those people? If God created all of us, how can any of us be unworthy? There are some of us who commit unworthy acts, but are we unworthy people? Do we have the opportunity for salvation and to live our future in heaven? Think about always how to love. If you have biases, if you have prejudice, think about where it comes from. How did it start? Where did you first hear it? Why do you believe it? If you don't love yourself, you have to start there. Think about when you deconstruct yourself, and as a woman, I'm very good about deconstructing, oh, I don't like my hips, or I wish my chin was a little tighter. Why? Love ourselves. The more we love ourselves, the more we are able to love our fellow men. There were times when it was difficult going from that segregated environment to that integrated environment, where I was number one on the honor roll for most of my life, and then I went into Andrews and became a middle-of-the-road student, one who was struggling. Because not that my intellect changed at all, but because my experiences had been different. The things that were normal for many of my classmates were things that I'd never experienced. Many of the reading lists they had, I'd never heard of the books, and I was an avid reader. So fortunately for me, one teacher at some point said, I will help you catch up by giving you this reading list, and you read it all summer long. This will help you as you sit in class wondering, what are they talking about? What is that analogy of? What is going on? So I spent a lot of time feeling less than once again. Think about that when you meet people who are new to the area, new to the country, who speak a different language. They need you to help them, not because they're less than or less intelligent, but because their experiences have been different. And you can help them get to understand how to fit in this community while they're trying to learn their way. Because to everything there is a time, from Ecclesiastes. To everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven. And that was the time that we decided that desegregation was the way to go. I don't believe that we've actually ever gotten to true integration. We have a lot of segregated pockets right now in the United States, and we will continue to. Why? Because like favors like. If I am in the United States, perhaps I am looking for someone like me. It could be a woman. It could be someone who's African American. It could be somebody who's tall and beautiful. I don't know. Just like. But when I go outside of the United States, it's a different thing altogether. I start to listen for anyone from the United States. I hear that accent, and I gravitate to it. It doesn't matter what you look like or where you came from, you feel like home to me. And we forget about some of our prejudices and biases when we're looking for that other like. But I believe that there are too few wonderful people in the world to discriminate against any group. You lose your opportunities to learn the best that life has to offer if you decide this is a line I cannot cross. I've had the opportunity to get to many foreign lands, and that is in itself something that is wondrous and a gift from God, because I was told once I hit high school, don't even bother to go to college. Don't even bother. You will waste your time, you will frustrate yourself, just go to work in that factory. And for a time, I believed in them. So instead of going to school, I got married, and then I decided that wasn't the best idea either. But I went to work in Saudi Arabia. My background is in nursing and in healthcare. And I had the opportunity to go to work in Saudi Arabia, and there were people who said to me, Valda, you can't go over there. You're going to die over there with those heathens. And I said, working these 2.5 jobs, I'm going to die over here. So I went away to Saudi Arabia to earn enough money to pay off those student loans. You might understand that concept. Amen. And while I was there, I had the opportunity to pay off those loans, but I also had the opportunity to be dropped into a community of people who were supposedly as different from me as anyone was ever going to be. They didn't believe what I believed. They didn't pray the way I prayed. They had a different opinion of the status of women. And yet, what did I find about my Saudi brethren? They believed, like I believe, that the world is a place that we want to see improved, that we want our children to do better than we are. We want to live in peace, we want to live in harmony, and we want to get to our equivalent of heaven at the end. It was the same concept in the 40 different countries I've had the opportunity to live in or work in. And I can tell you that our prejudices and biases are things that we just need to get over. People want the same thing, to live well, to live free, and to allow each generation to have a better life. As my life continued, I was put in a position to work with people who lived in terrible positions, who were persecuted. I went to work in refugee camps. People came to me and said, how is it that these people from the Sudan act the way that they act? And I said, I don't know. And people from the Sudan came to me and asked me, why do these healthcare people act the way they act and treat us the way that our persecutors treated us? And I had to say, I don't know. So in order to find out, I took the time to go to, not the Sudan, because the Sudan was too dangerous at the time. I took the time to go to Ghana to work with refugees from Liberia. I worked in a camp called Budaburam, where there were 70,000 people in an area a mile square. Did you imagine? No running water, no electricity, and for a woman with hot flashes, let me tell you, it was a sacrifice. That whole concept of air conditioning was like, ooh, I would just sit there and visualize coolness. Didn't always work. I found not only was I in a camp for people who were escaping persecution, but I was in a camp with people who were also the perpetuators of the evil. It was an interesting and sometimes a dangerous mix. But I prayed and I believed that God had sent me there and that he would protect me. After 3 months in the camp, I began to feel like I was more of the people. When I went there, they looked at me and they called me the fat white woman. Now, I've been called a few things in my life. White never did make this. So I asked them, how is it that I come here thinking that I'm doing good things and being a part of people, going to the motherland, being around the majority of people who look like me? And they said, you're different. You're not like us. But over time, they said, I was more like them because I took the time to listen, to learn, to understand, because they were looking for me to stop being that different person, to try to keep sacred that differentness that I brought with me, that Americanness, and just be what? A citizen of the world. And when I learned that, they embraced me, and they called me sister. There are many, many things that we can know and that we can do. But if you ever have the opportunity, just remember to reach out in any way that you can to help any person that you can. And working at that camp to start clinics to restore people's vision, because when you're running away from the rebels and hoping that you will live, you don't think to get eyeglasses sometimes. Or to help teachers understand that children who have visual deficits did not have learning deficits. When I set up that clinic and I went on my own and paid my own money, the work was looked at because it was developed as a sustainable initiative, not a drop-in helicopter project. Go in for 2 weeks, do good work, disappear. No one knows what to do after that. But I developed collaborations with eye doctors there. USAID, the U.S. Agency for International Development, liked my work and paid for me to go to Sri Lanka. So now I'm going to a different place with another set of people who I'm thinking are totally different from me. I'm working with the religious leaders who are men with bald heads wearing orange robes. It is not allowed for me to touch them, though I did. It was quite accidental, but it is very much a bad thing to touch a monk, for a woman to. It really takes a whole bunch of cleaning from there for him, for his soul, for his physical part. But I messed around and gave him a good old southern hug in the midst of some enthusiasm, so he disappeared for a few days while he could reclaim. And when I apologized to him, as I realized that in my exuberance I had overstepped my bounds, and I said, I'm really sorry. It was not my intention to offend you, or to demean you, and he said, I know that you didn't because I have seen your heart. Your actions were not important because I understood your motives. In a simple moment of joy, you did what came natural to you. Though it was unnatural to me, I understood it because you have come here to help me and to help my people. It was one of those times when you just think, thank you, God. That same time in Sri Lanka, I was just tired. You ever done work where you're giving and giving and giving of yourself and you just feel tired? Your soul feels tired. It's not just your body. Your mind can't think anymore and your soul is just weary. And so one day before I was supposed to leave Sri Lanka, I just felt like I had to go that day. I paid extra money for the train, extra money for the taxi, extra money for the plane in order to leave early. And by the time we got to Germany, I found that a war had broken out in Sri Lanka. I felt that I was guided out of the country at that moment, in that time. Because from Isaiah, but those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. My eagle was an American Airlines jet. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. This has been my life, starting as a little colored girl in High Point, North Carolina, understanding that people around the world go through things that we cannot even fathom. That when I was in Africa, in Ghana, with those refugees from Liberia, when a mother told me that trying to get away from the rebels, they ran and they had to stay in the woods and just eat yams and roots and whatever they could. And after 10 or 12 days, they thought it was safe and they came out. And they saw a fruit tree and they were getting some nourishment for a change. And when that happened, a lion came up on them. And so the father, in trying to protect this family of 10, went forward to fight the lion to save his family. But in that particular environment, they knew that it was impossible for them to survive without the father. The mother made a decision that the only way she could save the father and therefore save the family was to put the 18-month-old child in the path of the lion so that the rest of them could get away. These are things that people around the world endure that we don't even consider. We don't understand the suffering that people who come here from other places have endured. The simple freedom of being able to understand that if you are involved with the law, at least you're going to have the opportunity to say that you're innocent, that you won't just be taken away and put into a cell, never to be seen again. When I was in Sri Lanka, a woman told me a story that when that tsunami came in 2004, that tsunami, in the blink of an eye, washed away almost 250,000 lives. And as she was on the beach that day, and the waves rose up 30 feet, and when they got to her, she was running with her child, and she was swept up in the water, swept away. And luckily, she was swept to a tree, and she was able to grab hold of a limb, and she held on to it, and she held on to it. And she was so tired, and she was so tired after an hour, after 2 hours, after 3 hours. And you know how your mind gets to you when you think that you ever been driving when you're really, really tired and your mind somewhere in there says, you can just close your eyes for a minute. And some other part of you is saying, don't do it. But you feel like, oh, I'm just so tired. If I just close my eyes for a moment, I'll be all right. And she closed her eyes for a moment. And when she woke up again with a start, she realized, oh my God, I'm still holding on to the tree. Thank you, God. But she also realized that her baby was gone. These are the stories of people who come here to our shores, the ones looking for what is said on the Statue of Liberty, give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. Remember that when you meet people who are different from you, who don't seem to understand, who you become a little disgusted with because they don't speak English yet and they've been here long enough. Really? have endured things that you will never, ever think to endure. Because, again, it is always a time to love. But as you go forth and think about this month, this day, this year, think about the ways you can give. You don't have to fly to the other side of the world. All you have to do is go to a shelter and feed someone. All you have to do is help your elderly neighbor get her groceries in from the car. Rake some leaves for someone. Take all those clothes that are jamming up your closet and take them down to the women's shelter. It doesn't take a lot to give, but when you do, you feel good. You don't expect anything in return, but you get that joy. I learned so much more from the people I went to help than they would ever learn from me. They taught me that no matter what else is going on in my life, that my life is good. My life is great. And we who live in this great place should take more time to be great with each other. Because again, from 1 Corinthians, if I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, have not love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have a faith that can move mountains, but have not love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and surrender my body to the flames, but have not love, I gain nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It is not rude. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices in the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. And in order to do that, you have to think in terms of changing yourself and changing the way you think. And now I'll go secular on you for a second, just to remember that change is something that we can do. And from the immortal words of Sam Cooke, there'll be times when you think you cannot last too long. Somehow you'll be able to carry on. It's gonna take a long time coming, but I know change gonna come, and you'll be it. Thank you.
Pneumonia, but she will be here maybe for a couple of minutes if you've got some questions, and I know that you have classes to get back to, that you're dying to get back to. Thank you, and may the Lord bless us.